Well, it seems many people want to have their cake and eat it. They want to be able to ride down the road at 45 kilometers an hour and then turn off onto a mountain bike trail and continue at the same speed. Well, clearly, if you do that, it's going to cause a load of conflict. So today we're going to be looking at the whole business surrounding derestricting your e-mountain bike. Now, there are many ways to derestrict your e-mountain bike, and we'll cover some of them a little bit later on. It's worth pointing out actually that derestricting your e-bike is actually not illegal. It only becomes illegal when you take it on the highway. Now, obviously that depends from country to country. In terms of the e-mountain bikes on the market, there's class 1, class 2 and class 3. You have pedal assist and also throttle assist. You also have pedelecs, S-pedelecs and R-pedelecs. Now the pedelecs are restricted to 25 kilometers an hour, S-pedelecs to 45 kilometers an hour, and R-pedelecs are unrestricted e-mountain bikes. Now, I think the first thing to cover, Chris, is where we stand on this. Now, I think we're quite clear that we get a lot of comments on the channel, is that when you ride in an e-mountain bike on the road, 25 kilometers an hour can be, I don't know what the word is.
A bit of a slog if you get
it. Can be a slog,
yeah.
Especially when our colleagues on GCN are riding at probably speeds of 40 or 50 kilometers an hour.
It's a bit unfair.
It is a bit unfair, yeah. But bottom line, I think if you want to ride on a road at 45 kilometers an hour, you actually have to abide by the law. Yeah. So you can actually go and derestrict your e-mountain bike. If you do that, you need to register it, you need to license it and get it road legal. And then you have a bike which you can perfectly ride on the road without any worries at all.
100% legal.
The problem then becomes is if you want to ride it in an off-road situation, you need to get it back to a derestricted bike, because a lot of trails, especially, well, here in the UK, for example, riding a bike at 50 kilometers an hour down a forest trail is going to be at odds with maybe a family out riding their bike.
Horse riders, shared trail access.
So yeah, actually, Chris, that's the first thing to cover is actually trail access. Okay. Now, land access is a massively complex subject, not just for e-mountain bikers, but for walkers, bike riders and horse riders worldwide. Obviously, it varies from country to country. Now, recently, America had new rules granted for e-mountain biking, and that's also down to class 1, class 2, class 3, but that's down to the different types of landowner in that country. And it's the same here in the UK. If you have private land in the UK compared to maybe forest lands or national park lands, there are different laws for different parts of the country, right, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're riding on private land with no public access, riding a derestricted e-bike isn't a big deal. You know, I've done it plenty of times myself in the right places, but if you're riding it in the wrong places, it's a delicate area and it isn't going to win any favours, you know, with mountain bikers and e-bikers and horse riders, you name it, out in the woods. You know, going to cause some
Now,
problems.
today we're actually at Revolution Bike Park in North Wales. It's also worth pointing out, if you come to a bike park, you really need to discuss this with the owner of the bike park. It might be a public bike park, it might be a private bike park. Obviously, it's going to cause conflict if you're going to be using trails which in a place which is actually designed around an uplift vehicle. So land access, we could go on for days, months and years discussing it because it all depends on the country you live in. So make sure you get the okay, not only from the landowner, but also to make sure that where you're riding your e-bike is legal. So should you actually derestrict your e-mountain bike? Well, it actually comes down to you as the rider and the type of riding that you do. Obviously, if you're going to be commuting, you might have different needs to somebody who's going to be riding in technical off-road conditions.
Yeah, exactly that. I think if you are going to ride off-road derestricted, just make sure you've got the permission of the landowner and you're doing it all legally. If you are going to ride it on the road, it's something we simply don't condone. If you do get in a traffic accident on a derestricted e-bike, it is a big deal and you can be facing fines, losing license, things like that. So if you are going to ride one on the road, you just need to make sure it's all legal and above board, licensed, insured, etc.
Now, will derestricting your e-mountain bike give you a better or worse ride experience? Well, from my experience, I recently did a Tour de Mont Blanc, which was 350 kilometers. We did 18,000 meters of climbing and I think 20,000 meters of descending over 3 days. And not once in those 3 days did I feel a need for a bike that went over 25 kilometers an hour. Obviously, some of you guys out there are going to be commuting, you will disagree with that.
Yeah.
Chris, what's your thoughts? Will it give you a better ride experience?
Sometimes at like the private bike parks that I've ridden, derestricted e-bike, it will give you that little bit more speed into the bigger features, and sometimes when you like land flat off a jump and you need a bit more speed for the next feature, you can increase that speed and it will obviously keep going all the way. So on a unrestricted bike, you sometimes hit that lag and you're like, oh, this is just a heavy bike, and you're working really hard to get it up to speed. So derestricted e-bike off-road in the right place, being legal, I think is a good idea.
But you say that, Chris, you do a certain type of riding. You ride some big jumps. You're talking, 50, 60, 70 foot jumps.
Yeah.
A lot of people riding e-mountain bikes aren't going to be doing that type of riding.
As you say, I think if you've got that technical slow speed riding outside your front door where you don't really exceed that limit too much, then I wouldn't derestrict an e-bike.
Yeah, because after all, we recently did a feature on a pedelec, which is 25 kilometers an hour, versus a speed pedelec, which went to 45 kilometers an hour. And we took both those bikes into technical off-road conditions, and our conclusions were that ultimately both bikes are exactly the same when you're in an off-road environment. On the road, big difference. Off-road, pretty much the same.
If you're commuting on that S pedelec, it would literally half your time, but that's all above board, legal. That thing had number plates, brake lights, everything, didn't it?
But Chris is right. If you're going to be hitting those big booters, then derestricting your e-bike is probably going to enable you to get over them. Or if you're on a 25k one, hitting them, maybe not. What effect is derestricting going to have on the motor and the components?
Well, Steve, obviously on a restricted e-bike, as soon as you hit that 25 kph limit on the road, the motor's going to stop working. So for instance, if you're riding 5 miles of road above that assistance level, then you're not going to be putting the motor to work.
Your motor's going to be put to work.
Whereas on a
which is a good thing.
E-bike, that motor is going to be working 100% all the time, not giving it a break. So bearings, wear in the motor is going to be increased over that.
Overheating possibly?
Possibly. And how about battery as well? What do you think it's going to affect?
Well, it's going to have a huge effect on the battery, and I think we should maybe cover that a little bit later on, because like a derestricted bike's going to drain that battery a lot more, right?
Yeah, and I think the wear on the components, as you mentioned, the whole drivetrain, it's going to be under a lot more stress the whole time as well. And I think on a derestricted e-bike, you find yourself in a lot more of the lower gears on the cassette as well, the harder gears. So you find that you're going to be burning out those lower cogs on the cassette as well, because you normally in there spinning along, especially on the road in the hard gear. So.
And of course, a lot of these motors, I mean, not all the motors, but a lot of them are going to be maybe not designed for being derestricted.
Exactly,
so it's going to put increased strain on them, which they're not designed for. Warranty. What happens to your warranty on your e-mountain bike if you derestrict it?
Well, if you derestrict,
it's gone, right?
Yeah,
it's gone.
Derestrict a bike that is in warranty, then it's null and void straight away. But if you are obviously outside that warranty period, then that is your call ultimately.
Will a shop or a motor brand know that it's been derestricted?
Yeah, a lot of those devices are actually removable quite easily. Some of them are just a simple O-ring snapped connector, or you can wire them in. You can remove them pretty easily, but once that motor actually goes back to the manufacturer themselves, they can hook that motor up and actually read the speed limit has been exceeded and for how long, things like that. Something that not necessarily a shop would know, but a motor manufacturer will be able to pick that up if they plug that motor in. If they do,
okay. Right, say that you've derestricted your bike. Can it actually be returned to normal? Is it easy to do that?
You can on some of the settings, on if the Bluetooth connected bikes.
But what I mean is, can it be returned to normal and nobody will know about it?
No, they will know eventually if that motor was to fail. You could sell the bike and no one would actually know, but if that motor fails and had to go back for warranty, that's when you could run into issues.
So that is something you actually need to take into account, maybe if you're buying a second-hand e-mountain bike. Right, it's time to turn then to have a look at the different devices of derestricting your e-mountain bike. First of all, I want to point out, we actually did a video recently with M1 and they make a bike called the Spitzing, and that bike's available as a pedelec, an S pedelec and an R pedelec. It actually uses the same TQ120S motor. The only difference is it's been flashed. The software on each of the motors is different. So you've got, one of the bikes is 250 watt-hour average, the S pedelec is 500 watt-hour average, and the R pedelec is, I think, about 900 watt-hour average. But that is, like I said, that is an off-the-shelf e-mountain bike you can go and buy. It can be legal on the road. But let's talk about the derestricted devices which you can buy as aftermarket products. What have we got here?
So a lot of people think that by derestricting your e-bike, it actually adds a lot more power to it, where it actually does none of that. All it does is literally tricks the computer system speed reading into thinking that the wheel is actually spinning at half the speed it actually is. So the wheel's spinning at 50 kilometers an hour, it thinks it's doing 25 kilometers an hour. So it'll actually just keep assisting all the way up.
Chris, I think it's time to get into the workshop, and can you show us some of the different devices? Because it's not just physical things. There are some like apps and stuff like that as well, right?
You've got lots of things you can wire in, clip on your bike. It's all going to do the same job.
Take us through a list of them, Chris.
Let's go. So there's plenty of ways to de-restrict your e-bike, and there are a lot of bodges out there too, which simply won't last when it comes to an off-road situation with mud and water and things like that. Loads of devices such as these, they all pretty much half the wheel speed. So whichever they're doing, they're not going to increase the power to your bike. They're just simply halving the wheel speed. So first up, you've got the badass e-bike box. It simply clips onto your speed sensor on your bike. Really easy to install and remove that one. You've got the speed box or the pair-tune MSO dongle, which is hardwired into your bike. It's a bit more involved fitting that bike by removing motor covers, things like that. It can be turned on and off as well using the walk button or the light button on your bike, so you can choose to have your bike de-restricted or restricted. And a lot of bike manufacturers try to stop the de-restriction thing going on, but one thing they won't stop is a mechanical de-restriction device, because it doesn't work on the software, it's just simply on the bike itself. And this is a planetary geared system with an inner magnet which spins slower than the actual rotation of the wheel. And lastly, there's all the apps such as Blevo, things like that can connect via Bluetooth to the older school bikes. You can simply change the wheel speed, sizes, the wheel size itself, and increase that assistance the whole way through just by simply swiping the screen.
So the bottom line on de-restricting your e-mountain bike, we definitely don't recommend it here on EMBN, both for practical reasons and maybe for enjoyment reasons as well. Now, I know that Chris rides in a private bike park and does some insane jumps, and he needs that de-restricted bike simply to get over the jumps. But I think one of the key things to discuss here is actually whether you're going to be riding an e-bike or an e-mountain bike. Now, there is a big difference. On an e-bike, if you're commuting, that's got different needs to if you're out in the mountain. Now, we're here in North Wales. We can ride our 25k e-bikes. We can ride pretty much for days, months on end without even getting up to 25k an hour, right?
True, yeah, some pretty big stuff out here for sure.
Yeah.
But I think if you're doing it legally and you have got that de-restricted e-bike in the right places, then it may enhance your riding experience.
Mm-hmm. Or, as we said, maybe just go and buy an off-the-shelf e-mountain bike which does 45, 50k anyway.
Exactly, doing it legally, that's the main thing.
That's it. So thanks for watching. I'm sure this will generate a lot of heated discussion as it did last time, but hopefully it's given you guys who do not know about de-restriction a bit of an insight into the different aspects of quite a hot topic.
Yeah, and if you want to stick around and check out a bit more content, we've got de-restricted versus restricted down here. Really cool video me and Steve did out in the woods. Drop us some comments in the box below, give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, and don't forget to drop us all your comments on de-restriction and restriction down below.
In the meantime, we're going out on our 25 km/h Canyon Spectrals and having a good bit of fun. See you later.